Most people think financial freedom feels rich. It doesn't. It feels quiet. It feels like your car making a weird noise and your heart not dropping. It feels like your boss sending, "Can we talk?" and you not spiraling for the next 2 hours. It feels like opening your banking app without bracing for bad news. And that's exactly why so many people miss it. They think freedom looks like spending. In reality, it looks like not being afraid all the time. Look, a lot of Americans are not broke in the dramatic sense. They're not on the street. They're not missing every payment. But they are financially fragile. Their whole life works only if nothing goes wrong. The paycheck lands on time, the car keeps running, the rent doesn't jump too much, the credit card doesn't get too ugly, the kid doesn't need something expensive this month, the company doesn't do layoffs. That is not freedom. That is a high-wire act with autopay. And the uncomfortable part is, a lot of people don't realize they're living like this until one random Tuesday when life taps them on the shoulder and says, "Hey, your margin was fake. Take Marcus. He's 34, lives outside Dallas, works in project management, makes about $92,000 a year, and from the outside he looks like he's winning. Nice apartment, solid SUV, weekend brunch, good shoes, new phone." He's the kind of guy people assume is doing fine because everything about his life looks stable. And technically, it is stable, right up until it isn't. One Friday afternoon, his company announces layoffs. 2 people on his team are gone before the end of the day. Marcus survives the cut, but the drive home feels different. For the first time in years, he stops thinking about what he earns and starts thinking about what would happen if the money stopped. That's a terrifying question when your whole lifestyle is built like a machine that only works if you feed it every 2 weeks. And that's when it hits him. He isn't financially free. He's just highly committed to his monthly bills. Here's the trap. Most people think financial freedom starts when you can buy more stuff. Bigger house, better car, nicer vacations. But actual freedom starts when fewer things can hurt you. That's the reveal. That's the whole thing. Financial freedom is not about maximum consumption. It's about minimum vulnerability. It's about reducing the number of things in your life that can knock you into panic. Because panic is expensive. Panic makes people keep bad jobs, swipe credit cards, finance dumb purchases, drain their future to protect their present and call it normal. It's not normal. It's just common. And common is not the same thing as smart. Marcus finally does the math that weekend, and the math is ugly in the most boring way possible. After taxes and benefits, he takes home around $5,800 a month. Rent is $2,050. Car payment is $640. Insurance is $210. Utilities and internet are $240. Groceries are around $500, although if he's honest it's higher because takeout keeps sneaking in. Gas is $220. Minimum debt payments are $360. Subscriptions are $140. Random spending somehow burns another $500 without leaving any real memory behind. So every month, Marcus is running a beautiful little treadmill. He makes enough to look comfortable, but not enough to be resilient. And that's the difference people miss. Comfort and resilience are not the same thing. You can look comfortable while being one inconvenience away from stress. That's what it actually feels like to be financially trapped in America. Not dramatic poverty, just a life with no slack in it. A life where every dollar already has a destination before it arrives. A life where you can survive, but only under perfect conditions. And life is never perfect for very long. That's why financial freedom feels so powerful when you finally get there. It is not because you suddenly become rich. It is because normal problems stop feeling like emergencies. You stop living like one surprise away from chaos. And honestly, this is where people get the entire conversation wrong. They think high income creates freedom automatically. It doesn't. High income with high fixed costs creates dependence with better branding. You can make 6 figures and still be completely owned by your obligations. In fact, that's one of the most dangerous financial positions in America because it looks safe from the outside. People clap for the lifestyle. They don't see the pressure behind it. They see the apartment, the car, the vacations, the dinners. They don't see the fact that the whole structure is standing on one paycheck and a prayer. Look, there are people making half of Marcus's income who are more financially free than he is, because they built a life that can absorb impact. That's what freedom really buys you: shock absorption. Think about money like suspension on a car. If your finances have no suspension, every bump feels violent. Every repair, every bill, every delay, every mistake gets transmitted straight into your nervous system. You feel all of it. Financial freedom is when your life has enough cushion that bad news still matters, but it doesn't own the week. The tire blows and it's annoying. The medical bill shows up and it's manageable. The company starts acting weird, and you have time to think instead of instantly begging reality not to collapse. That's what people are actually chasing, even if they don't know how to describe it. So Marcus starts making changes, and none of them are sexy. That's important. Real financial progress is usually visually unimpressive. He sells the SUV and downsizes to a used sedan. Not because cars are evil, because he realizes he was renting an image of himself for $640 a month. He moves when his lease ends, not into some miserable cave, just into a place that doesn't demand such a huge percentage of his income. He cuts the convenience spending that felt harmless because it was small and frequent. He automates savings so he stops having the same emotional argument with himself every payday. He starts treating cash reserves like a necessity, not like something you build after you're already comfortable. And for a while it feels weird, even embarrassing, because modern American culture is built around visible consumption. People notice what you drive. They notice where you live. They notice your shoes, your trips, your upgrades, your dinners, your aesthetic. They do not notice your lower burn rate. They do not notice your emergency fund. They do not notice that your monthly obligations dropped by $1,000. They do not notice that you quietly became harder to scare. But that invisible progress is what changes your life. Nobody claps when you stop being fragile. And that's exactly why so few people do it. A year later, Marcus has 6 months of basic expenses saved. His credit card balance is gone. He's contributing steadily to retirement. His monthly life costs less. And the strangest part is that he doesn't feel deprived. He feels lighter. He sleeps better. He doesn't need Friday to rescue him from Monday. He doesn't feel that weird panic during every company meeting. When his car needs repairs, he gets irritated, not crushed. When his manager becomes unreasonable, he has options. That word matters. Options. Financial freedom feels like options. The option to leave. The option to wait. The option to say no. The option to think clearly because urgency is no longer strangling your judgment. That's why financially free people often look less impressive than financially stressed people. The stressed person is usually trying to maintain an image. The free person is trying to maintain control. Those are very different goals. The stressed person asks, "Can I make this payment work?" The free person asks, "What does this do to my flexibility?" The stressed person buys things that make them feel successful for a weekend. The free person builds a life that stays stable for years. One is chasing the appearance of progress. The other is building actual leverage over their own life. Now, let's be honest about why this is so hard. It's not just math. It's psychology. A lot of people are not overspending because they're stupid. They're overspending because spending relieves pressure for about 11 minutes. It gives identity. It gives comfort. It gives reward. It gives the feeling of progress without the discomfort of actual discipline. A nicer apartment feels like you made it. A newer car feels like you're moving up. A better phone, better clothes, better furniture, better everything feels like proof that your hard work is becoming visible. And that's why lifestyle inflation is so dangerous. It doesn't feel like failure. It feels like success. That's what makes it such a clean trap. You don't feel trapped when you upgrade. You feel proud. You feel adult. You feel like you finally caught up to the life you were supposed to have. Then, slowly, quietly, your fixed costs rise to meet your income. Your standards rise. Your normal gets more expensive. And before long, the raise that should have created freedom only created maintenance. You earn more, but somehow you need more too. That's the hamster wheel in its most polished form. Not obvious recklessness. just a sequence of reasonable decisions that, together, steal all your margin. And that changes everything. It changes careers because you no longer have to say yes to every bad deal. It changes relationships because financial pressure stops leaking into every conversation. It changes parenting because your nervous system is not fried all the time. It changes health because you're not carrying low-grade panic like background music. Money doesn't solve every problem, obviously, but stable money removes a layer of chaos that makes every other problem harder to handle. So what is the actual formula here? It's simpler than people want it to be. Lower your fixed costs. Build cash reserves. Eliminate high-interest debt. Invest consistently. Protect your flexibility like it's one of your most valuable assets because it is. That's the framework. Not flashy. Not complicated. But brutally effective. You do not need a millionaire lifestyle to feel financially free. You need enough margin that life cannot bully you every month. And this is where a lot of viewers need the truth, not motivation fluff. You might not need a bigger raise as much as you need a smaller financial identity. You may not have an income problem first. You may have an obligation problem. You may have designed a life that is too expensive to feel safe inside. That's a hard truth, but it's also good news. Because if the problem is partly structural, not just salary-based, then your freedom is more within reach than you think. It feels like your paycheck becoming useful instead of already spoken for. It feels like your future not constantly being sold to fund your present. It feels like not needing every month to go perfectly. It feels like having room. Room to think. Room to breathe. Room to make a good decision instead of a fast one. That's the part nobody posts. Nobody makes a flashy montage about your emergency fund covering a transmission repair. Nobody brags that they can survive 6 months without income. Nobody shows off the emotional peace that comes from not being one inconvenience away from debt. But that peace is real. And once you have it, it is very hard to go back. So if you've been thinking financial freedom is some distant luxury reserved for people with giant portfolios and beach houses, stop. For most people, it begins much earlier. It begins the month your entire life no longer depends on one paycheck landing exactly on time. It begins the moment a problem shows up and you don't feel your stomach drop. It begins when your money finally starts protecting your life instead of performing for other people.